Good evening, everyone. Guys, am I audible? Yeah, thank you. So, in our last few sessions, we were discussing about different kind of attacks that a hacker would do, right? And based on the scenario, we have seen how hackers can identify vulnerabilities, how hackers are trying to steal our passwords, how hackers can use backdoor applications, or maybe if hacker wants to destroy the data on user computer, how hacker can use malwares, right? So generally, when a hacker is trying to launch attack onto a victim's computer, right? When a hacker is trying to launch an attack onto the victim's computer, there is a session from hacker's computer to the victim's computer, right? So you'll have a session which is created from hacker's computer to victim's computer. Now the problem here is when there's a session created from the hacker's computer to the victim's computer. Now assume the victim is a administrator or victim is monitoring what kind of connections are getting established to their system and all, right? Is there a chance that this victim or the victim's computer administrator will be able to identify from which IP address all these requests are coming? And once the IP address is known, from that IP address, will the person be able to see from which city or from which ISP's network and all these connections are coming here? So what do you say? So if there is a direct connection, right, it is always possible that the administrator of that system or that network will be able to track from which IP address these connections are being established and then try reverse tracking it to see which ISP or from which city is this connection established and all that. Now the problem is if you are a hacker, do you want your IP address details or your whereabouts to be captured or to be traced? If you are a hacker, you don't wish or you don't want someone to trace your original location, or you don't want someone to identify where are you operating from or where are you doing these attacks from and all, right? So if you are a hacker, not only trying to launch an attack, but you should also make sure that your details are not known to your target. So your target should not know your details or your whereabouts, right? So in such condition, as a hacker, you can use different techniques to hide your real IP address or maybe your real location details, right? So generally for covering your traces, to hide your traces, you'll be using different techniques. So the first technique from that is you try to hide behind a proxy server, right? You try to hide behind a proxy server, right? So have you guys come across the name proxy? Yeah. So here when you speak about a proxy server would be a server somewhere on internet. Now let's say, for example, this is the hacker's system connecting to internet, and then this is a target. So this proxy is a server somewhere on internet. Now what hacker does, when hacker wants to launch an attack, instead of directly doing it, instead of directly connecting from hacker's mission to the target where hacker's details will be revealed, hacker will not go with this method. Hacker doesn't use this. Instead, what the hacker does is initiate a connection through the proxy. So what hacker does on the application, whatever hacker is using to launch the attack, hacker would define the proxy server's IP address, the proxy server IP address, and the port number will be defined, right? So that this application will initiate a request towards the proxy server first. Proxy will receive the connection and then forward it to whatever destination you are looking for, right? Proxy would receive the connection and then forward it to the target system, right? So here, when you see from the when you see from the target's point of view, where is the request initiated from? Is the request initiated from the proxy server or is it initiated from the user computer? So the request seems to be initiated from the proxy server, right? So even if the administrator wants to see where exactly the attack is originating from and want to uh, raise a cyber complaint or maybe want to investigate and all, right? This administrator will see the requests are initiated from the proxy, right? So they'll only see the request is initiated from the proxy server. Okay. Now, when you speak about this proxy servers, you have proxy servers which are offering you free services, and you also have proxy servers where you have to pay and take the services, right? So there are some servers which are offering you free proxy services, and there are some servers which ask you to pay the money, purchase a subscription, and after purchasing the subscription you will be able to use the service, right? So the main difference between the free and the paid proxy service is that in case of the free service, right, in case of the free proxy server, you will have lower speed, right? Obviously performance or the speed will not be so good, right? And this particular free proxy servers may not be available all the time. So in some conditions the proxy may not be accepting your request also, right? So you'll have to keep checking for different proxies. And there's one more issue. This particular free proxy servers would maintain a log of all the connections. The free proxy server will maintain a log of all the connections, right, that are passing. So in short, it means from which IP address you have initiated the request, what was your actual target. So all this information will be saved in the proxy server, right? But if you go with the paid proxy server, you'll have no logs, no logs on the paid proxy server, and at the same time the proxy server will give you with better performance, right? It gives you better performance, and server is always available, right? So you'll not get into a situation where server is not available or server is not accepting the connection. So those kind of issues would not be there in the paid or the premium subscriptions. So is the difference clear? What is the main difference between the free and the paid proxy servers? Let us see how we can use this proxy service. So this proxy servers will be available on internet. You will be able to search and find out the proxy server details. So before I do that, let me check what is my IP address. So I'm showing you what is the real IP address of my computer when I'm reaching internet. So as you see, it says my IP address is something like 27.6.33.235. So this is my computer's IP address. Now I'll try to find a proxy server and use that proxy server configuration on my web browser. Right. And this proxy server configurations you have to do on every application. Right. So you'll have to configure every application for the proxy settings. So I'll give a search query proxy IP list, right? So here you will see Google showing you with multiple services, or it shows you with multiple websites which are offering you the proxy services. Okay, so here I'm going to this particular web page, hide my name, and here I'll select to show me proxy servers with support HTTPS connections, because as you all know, anyway, the majority of websites what we use today, they're all HTTPS connection, right? So I'm only looking for those proxies which support HTTPS connection. And here it says there's a proxy server in Germany, right? Which supports both HTTP as well as HTTPS. So that's good. So all I need to do is take the IP address, make a note of the port number. So the port number is 3128, right? So then I'll configure this settings on my web browser. So I go to the web browser settings, search for proxy. So in the proxy settings, I'll say uh, I want to connect with this HTTPS proxy. So this is the IP address and the port number is 3128 as we have seen. So give the IP address and the port number of the proxy server. Say OK. Now let us check what is my IP address. So I'm trying to reconnect to the same website. What is my IP address? We'll see if the server is available or not. Okay, so as you see, now when I'm trying to connect with this server, it says 3.126.79.210 is my proxy server IP. Right. So earlier it was 27.6.33.235. So is the IP address changed when I'm browsing internet? So the IP address of my system, right, seems to be something like 3.126.79.210 when I'm browsing internet now, right? But again, as I said, this particular proxy configuration has to be defined on every application. So if I'm going to use, say, Google Chrome, I have to define this proxy configurations on Google Chrome also. right? If I don't define it on Google Chrome, it will directly establish a connection to the remote server, right? So in that case, my IP address will be revealed, right? So let me remove these settings from the browser. So this is what happens when you are using a proxy. But there is one disadvantage with the proxy. Whether you are using the free version or the premium subscription version, this connection between your computer and the proxy server, this is not encrypted. So this connection is not encrypted. This is in clear text. It means your ISP or any other authority, if they are monitoring your network connection or your network activities, they will be able to identify what exactly you are trying to connect with. They'll be able to identify what is your actual target, right? What are you trying to connect, or what sort of request you are trying to send. Okay, so is this clear? What is a disadvantage of using a proxy? Guys, are you clear with what is the disadvantage of using a proxy? First thing, you'll have to configure this proxy settings on every application. Secondly, the connection between the hacker's computer and say the proxy is not encrypted. So all the activities can be tracked, right? Means all the activities can be seen by your ISP or any other authority, whoever is monitoring your network connection. To overcome this, hackers are using a different technology, which is called a VPN proxy. Hackers are using a different technology called VPN proxy. So here what happens in VPN proxy, similar to the proxy setup, you're going to have a server somewhere on internet between the hacker's computer and the target. So on internet, you will have a VPN proxy, right? And whenever you have to connect to some target resource, it can be a website or it can be anything else, right? Whenever you are trying to connect to the target resource, you have to first start the VPN client software. So when you're going to use a VPN proxy, they'll give you a client software. A tool will be given. You'll have to install that tool on your computer, and then you have to start that. Now this particular tool is going to initiate a request towards the VPN proxy, and this connection is encrypted. So the connection between your computer and the VPN proxy server is encrypted. Now the VPN proxy server is going to receive your connection and then forward it to whatever the target or whatever the destination you are trying to reach. Okay. So same as the proxy that we were discussing earlier, even in case of VPN proxies, you have services which are free, and you also have services which are paid, right? So the main difference between this free and the paid one, same as what we discussed in case of proxy. If it is a free service, right, the bandwidth, the speed will be less, right? and there is no guarantee that the server is always available and is going to receive your connection, and logs will be maintained. But when you go with the paid service, right, you'll have better speed, no logs, and server will always be available to accept your connection. So you'll not have any disconnections and all that. And the other advantage of the VPN proxy compared to a proxy, as I said, in case of a proxy, your connection is not encrypted, but in case of a VPN proxy, your connections are all encrypted, right? So that's another advantage. So even if someone wants to capture your traffic and see where exactly you are getting connected to, they will not be successful. Okay. So is it clear the difference between a proxy and a VPN proxy? Okay, and here when you speak about the VPN proxies, right? Uh, you have some free VPN proxies, but in the recent findings, it was found that these free VPN proxies are not really giving you good security, right? So they're actually leaking your information instead of protecting your information, right? So you'll have to be careful with what VPN proxy service you're going to choose, right? So here, let me install a VPN proxy and show you how exactly it would function. Harish, if you say the proxy or the VPN proxy, they'll have your computer's IP address and all. If you are going with the free version, they maintain it in the log, right? But say you're going with the paid versions, they don't maintain those details, so logs will not be maintained. Okay, so here I'm installing a application called CyberGhost. Now, even though we call it as a VPN proxy, right, in the market, all these tools are given with the general name as VPN, right? And again, when you are working with the firewalls, so in our further sessions, you'll also come across something called VPN, right? Similar naming, but the usage is different, right? So naming and all is similar, but the usage will be different. So don't get confused. So this application, the CyberGhost application, it will try to download the installer from internet, the newer version of the installer, and then do the installation. So let it download and install the newer version. What nonsense. taking a long time. Okay, so here, as you see, I've installed another VPN proxy application called Tunnel Bear, right? And this one's they ask you to create a user account, right? So no need to give your real email ID and all for creating a user account, because they don't give you trial for a very long duration. Some VPN tunnel applications, they give you only for 1 day, that is only for 24 hours, right? So in such conditions, you can just take up a temporary email ID, create a user account only for using that application as a trial version, and then you can discard that. So, good. So, second. Okay. So looks like the tunnel bear is also not responding for some reason. Not an issue. I have another VPN application. Let me share the screen. I'll show you. Okay, so you're able to view my VPN application, right? Guys, are you able to see this application? Yeah, okay. So as you see, this is another application. This is VPN Unlimited, right? So this is application name, right? So once you have the application, so this one, it shows you with a list of all different servers and all in different regions, right? So all you need to do is choose a server, right? Now let's say I want to access internet from a server in Germany, right? Or maybe somewhere in France. I can select that server, right? So it will directly establish a VPN connection from your computer to the server in France. So once the connection is established successfully, you will be able to browse internet and all. You don't have to make any changes in the web browser configurations or in your application and all, right? So all traffic from your mission will be taken through this VPN client to the VPN server, and VPN server will forward it towards internet, right? So here, as you see, it says uh, my VPN is established, right? So what I'll do is, let me check by going with a trace route. Okay, so I'm trying to perform trace route to 8.8.8.8, and as you can see, this is how my trace route is. right? This is when I have my VPN enabled, right? So with the VPN tunnel on, this is how my traceroute is, right? Then what I do is disable the VPN, right? I've disabled the VPN, so stopped it. Now let me perform traceroute again. We'll see if it is the same or if it is something else. So you can see the one on the left hand side is when VPN is enabled. The traceroute on the right hand side is with sorry, without VPN after disabling the VPN. So is it the same route or is it different? So it is going through a different route, right? When I have VPN, and it is taking a completely different route when I don't have a VPN, right? So when you go with VPN, it is not only the traffic that is initiated from your web browser, but all the traffic from your computer will be controlled, means all the traffic will be taken over by the VPN client, and that will be forwarded towards the VPN server. Okay, so you don't have to manually make any configurations on your applications or the browsers. Okay, so is this clear, everyone? Vijay, it depends on what kind of VPN you are using. So, like what I have shown you, if I am this VPN Unlimited, mine is a paid subscription. So the VPN server will not save my information. But if you are going with a free VPN server, then all your information will be saved. Is it clear? So if you are going with the free service, logs will be maintained. So the VPN server logs will contain the information from which IP address you have initiated the connection, where are you getting connected to, and all this. Yes, if you are using a free VPN, investigator can identify your real details because the logs are saved. But if you are going with the paid version, logs will not be saved. So investigator doesn't have anything to uh, make a note of and follow. Okay. Now, when you speak about the proxy or the VPN, as I said, in both these cases, right? If you go with the free versions, your details are available. That is, logs are saved, right? And an investigator can capture your details and further try to identify who are you, from which ISP you are getting connected, and all. And of course, when a law enforcement agency is requesting for the details, ISPs will provide all the details about the end user. Who is the end user? Uh, their name or maybe their contact details, right? All the details, whatever ISP has taken from the end user, right? So all the KYC information will be given to the law enforcement agencies. Now, hackers, they don't want to take up this kind of a risk, right? Because even if you say I wanted to purchase a VPN service, you still need to go with some sort of payments and all. Now, when you're going with some kind of payment, you still have some track that who is this user who is purchasing it and all. So whenever some purchase is being done, there is still some record, right? Who is purchasing this and all this. So to overcome this, hackers are actually going with something else called dark web. Uh, yeah, before we proceed, and Chendu, as you are asking if we can select only one location or multiple locations, if you go with a VPN, right? Each VPN will let you get connected to one server. So if I'm using, say, VPN Unlimited, so from my computer using VPN Unlimited, let's say I'm connected to a server in France. So once this connection is established, then I can use CyberGhost, connect to a server in Germany, right? So it can be done, but it's not automatic. You'll have to do it manually. Now let's say this is what I can do. So from my system through internet, I'm connected to a server in France. So this is using the first application. So according to the France server, right, where is this request initiated from? According to the VPN server in France, where is the request initiated from? So it is initiated from my computer. So my real IP address is known, right. It's like this. This is through one application. Let's say I call it, say I'm taking it as VPN Unlimited. So once this VPN is established, then I'll use, let's say, CyberGhost and connect to the CyberGhost server. So I'm initiating a request towards the CyberGhost server. Right. So according to the CyberGhost server, what will be the source? Will it be the France VPN server or will it be my computer? So where will CyberGhost get the connection from? Because this VPN is taking over all my computer's traffic, right? So when CyberGhost is trying to connect, that request also will be going through the France, right? So from France, a request will be sent to CyberGhost. Now let's say this CyberGhost is somewhere in Germany, right? And then I can use another application, some XYZ. Say I'll use NordVPN, and this NordVPN will see request is coming from Germany, right? And then finally I can say from the NordVPN, try to connect with my target. So target will see the IP address of NordVPN server, right? And NordVPN server does not know where is the original request coming. It only knows that request has come from Germany, right? And this Germany server, it only knows the request is coming from France. And only the France server actually knows my IP, right? But you have to do all these things manually. And for this, you need to purchase licenses for three different VPN services, and then you have to use. Is it clear? Right. And here, as I said, hackers are using dark web to overcome this VPNs, the premium subscriptions and payment details and all this. So when you speak about the dark web, you can say that dark web is part of internet. Dark web is part of internet. You can say it's a hidden part of internet. So generally when you speak about internet, do we call internet as a public network or as a private network? So we all say internet is a public network, right? So within internet, so if you consider this entire rectangle as internet, within internet you have different types, right? So this internet can be classified into different types. The topmost layer is called surface web. The topmost layer is called surface web, right? Below surface web, you have something called deep web. Below deep web, you have something called dark web, right? So these are like the three different layers of internet. And generally, what we all use on day-to-day basis, right? What we generally say is the public internet is only your surface web. So surface web is what we generally refer as internet, right? So all the websites, say your media streaming, online shopping, social networking, right? So all the websites, what you are able to access without any kind of user authentications, right? Without any sort of restrictions is called surface web. Surface web is all the internet that you are able to access without any kind of restrictions, all the publicly accessible part of internet, right? Now let's say for example, we have Google. Can we all access Google? Do we need any user verifications or any kind of authentications to access Google? So guys, can we all access Google page? Do we need to authenticate or do we need to log in to access Google page? We can directly access it. You don't need to go with any sort of authentications and all to access the Google page, right? So that Google, the search engine part, where everyone can access the contents without any kind of authentications and all, you call it as surface web. You call it as surface web. Now let me take up a service of Google, let's say Gmail or Google Drive. Now, can we access Gmail or Google Drive without any kind of authentication, or do we need authentications? So to access Google Drive or Gmail, we need authentication. So without authentication, it is not possible, right? So here, the online resource, which is only accessible to you after successful user authentications, are part of deep web, right? So the data that is accessible directly without any kind of user authentications and all is surface web. The content that is only accessible after you authenticate, right, is deep web, right? Now for accessing the contents of surface web and deep web, you don't need any kind of special softwares. Your existing Firefox, Chrome, Edge, all these web browsers or your existing applications will be helping you to access the content of surface web and deep web. Only when you go with the deep web, you need to authenticate yourself, right? So once you authenticate yourself, you will be able to access the content. Right? But here, when you go to the bottom layer, the dark web, to access this dark web, you need some special softwares. Right? You need some special software to access the dark web content. Right? So this dark web is not directly accessible unless you have some special softwares and all. Right? And the most complicated part of this dark web is, in dark web you don't have any kind of search engine. So on surface web, if you do not know what is the website of some XYZ company, right, you will be able to directly search with the name, right? Go to a search engine, search with the name, find out the details, right? So even if you do not know the details of some organization or something, you'll still be able to get it. But when you speak about dark web, there is no such option. So in a dark web, you don't have a search engine. So you can access a resource in dark web only if you know very specifically what is the link, or you know what is the URL to access it. Right? So if you do not know the link, or you do not know how to access it, right, you will not be able to access that particular resource. Okay. And this dark web, right, is also again made by using different tools. So there are some tools like invisible internet protocol. We call it as I2P, right? Invisible internet protocol. You have something called freenet, opennet, right? And there's something else called Tor, onion router, right? So there are different kind of tools which can be used by hackers to create dark web, right? Now the thing here is, the dark web part, which is created using invisible internet protocol or I2P, cannot be accessed by freenet or Tor or something, right? Okay, and the dark web part, or the resource that is created using Tor, cannot be accessed by others. So it can only be accessed using Tor. Right? So you need some special software to access the contents and also to create the resources of that particular dark web. Okay, and as there is no search engine, obviously, if you do not know what exactly is the resource, you will not be able to access it. Okay, so is it clear what is dark web? So dark web is a part of internet, right, which is private in nature. You can have resources in this dark web, but those resources can only be accessed by people whom you have shared the resource with, right? So every user will not be able to access it, and you also need some special tools or special applications to access them, right? So different applications are available, right? Each uh, each can be used for creating its own part of the dark, right? And when you come with the dark web, even though you have different methods, like you can use I2P, freenet, and all, right? Unfortunately, these all methods were not so successful, right? These methods are all not so successful. The most successful uh, method of creating dark web resources and accessing the dark web resources is Tor, right? So this Tor is the onion router. So Tor stands for the onion router, right? So most of the content of dark web, what you see, is created using Tor, and to access it, you need Tor, right? Now, I'll show you how exactly the architecture of this Tor is. Now, let's say this is the hacker's computer, and you are trying to reach a target, right? You're trying to reach a target in surface web, right? You're trying to reach a target in the surface web, right? So now what happens when you're reaching a target on the surface web? Request from your computer will go to a host called Tor entry node, or you can also call it as God. Then the request will be forwarded to a Tor relay. It will be further forwarded to Tor exit. Right. So this is how your connection would pass through from your computer to Tor entry node, Tor entry node to Tor relay, Tor relay to Tor exit node, and then the Tor exit node will forward it to your target. And all this communication, starting from your computer till the Tor exit node, everything is encrypted. Right. So all this communication is encrypted from your computer till the Tor exit node. Okay. So is this clear? What actually happens with Tor when you're trying to access a resource on surface web? You'll have three different missions, three different hops between your computer and the target, right? Is it clear? Now let's say you are not accessing something on the surface web, but you are trying to access a resource on dark web. Then you'll not see the Tor exit node. This will also be a relay. In addition to it, you'll have three more relays. So in total, you are going to have six different systems between your computer and the actual target resource what you are trying to connect with, right? So if it is a dark web resource that you are trying to connect between your computer and the target, you will have six different systems, six hops. But if you go with a surface web, only three hops. Okay. And when you are using this Tor to initiate your connections, right, to access the resources in Tor, you'll be using a browser which is based on Firefox browser. So Firefox, as you all know, is a open source web browser. So the Tor community, they have taken the Firefox browser, they customize it to use this Tor routing protocol. So you call that browser as a Tor browser, right? You call it as a Tor browser. So Tor is a routing protocol, like how in your CCNA you are learning RAP, OSPF and all, right? So Tor is also a routing protocol, right? So that particular routing protocol can be accessed using this application called Tor browser, right? So is that clear? What is Tor browser? Okay. So let us install this and see how we can access the dark web resources and also the surface web resources using Tor browser. There's no such thing, Harish. Dark web can be used by anyone, not only for hackers. So once you install the Tor browser, right, you'll have to get connected to the Tor network. So once you are connected to Tor network, right, you can try to access anything on internet. Now let's say I'm trying to reach this web page, say Microsoft.com, Dell. Okay, so when you click on the log symbol here, it says request from my computer is going to Germany, then Sweden, then Luxembourg, and then to Microsoft site. Right. So in the same way, if I go to say the Dell web page, it's going to US, US to Germany, and then some other IP address in US, and then the Dell web page. Right. And if required, I can also say take a new route. So I can click on new circuit. It will change the route. So from Germany, it's going to some other IP in Germany, and then Norway, and then Dell. Right. So you'll be able to uh, reroute your traffic through different routes and all. Okay, so is this clear? How you can access the normal surface web content using Tor? Now, hackers can also host their own dark web websites or the resources using Tor, right? So all they need to do is just make sure that they have a simple web page here. So on this VM, I have a simple web page, a simple web server configured. So this is how it looks like. Okay, so this is how the web page looks like. So this is running on my computer. So I want to host this web page using dark web. So what I do is I have to take this uh, two lines of code. I have to take the two lines of code and put it onto the file tor.rc. I have to take this two lines of code and add it to the file tor.rc, right, on my computer, right? So that will be available here on your desktop. So you can go to browser, tor browser, tor, sorry, not tor, data, tor. So the path is given here in the notepad. So you can follow the path. So you have this tor rc. You can edit the file at the end of the line. Just add these two folders, right? So not the folder, at the end of the configuration file, add the two lines. Now these two lines, the first line says, create a folder in the C drive called tor web, and then in this particular folder, add the onion website, right? Now, what is this onion website? So generally when you speak about surface web, right, we'll have our websites like microsoft.com, zoomgroup.com, right? So you have some top level domains as .com, .in, .org, .net, and all this. But for the resources which are hosted in dark web through Tor, will have a top level domain as .onion. Right? It will have a top level domain as .onion. Right? So for this .onion pages, right? What you don't really need to create any domain name. You don't have to purchase a domain name and all, right? So when you're hosting your resource through Tor, automatically a .onion name will be given for you, right? So generally on Surface Web, you'll try to purchase a domain name. Once you purchase a domain name, you'll create DNS records and all, right? So when you're hosting resources on dark web, you don't really need it. All you need is just host a web page on your computer and run the Tor browser. The website URL and all will be automatically created, right? So once the website URL is automatically created, I'm saying save it in this location, in this particular folder called Tor web in the C drive. And then the second line says on 127.0.0.1 on port number 80, there is a website running. Now, what is this 127.0.0.1? So 127.0.0.1 is the loopback, right? So it's pointing towards my own system, right? So I'm saying on my own computer on port number 80, there is a website running, right? So you'll have to host this via Tor. So once the configuration file has been updated, all you need to do is run the Tor browser. So let me open this C drive. So as you see, there is no folder called Tor web. Now, once I run the Tor browser, automatically that folder will be created. Okay, so see this, the new folder is created. And here there is a file called hostname. It also shows us what is my onion link hostname. So this is the onion link, or this is the URL of my website. So if you already have Tor installed, any one of you, you can use this onion link and try to access that web page. So any one of you have this Tor browser installed? Okay, so in case you don't have Tor browser installed, let me share the Tor browser from my physical machine. So the web page is hosted through the VM. Now here, what I am sharing is from my physical machine. Mr. Bright, if you have it on your mobile phone, you can use that. You can access that through Tor browser on mobile also. Okay, so I'm giving that onion link on the Tor browser on my laptop. So it will try to establish the connection and show us the web page. Okay, so it is still loading that background image and all. The text part is okay. It's trying to load the background image, right? Now, if we see here, so there are 6 different hops between my computer and the actual website. So even though I'm trying to access the website which is running on my virtual machine from my physical computer, right? There is no direct connection. It is still going through 6 different hops before it gets before it gets connected to the target. So there is no direct connection here. Okay, is it clear? How you will be able to access the onion link, and when it is a onion link, how exactly the requests are passing through? No, Tor is not as VPN. Tor is different and VPN is different. Okay, so these are like different methods that hackers are trying to use to hide their real IP address details and all when they are trying to connect with the victim's missions. Right? So when they are connecting with the victim's missions, hackers can use either proxies or proxy VPNs or Tor browsers and all, right, to hide their real IP address details. Okay, so is it clear how hackers try to hide their IP address and all? So now, as we have seen, different kind of attack methods and also how hackers are trying to hide their IP address. Now tell me, if a hacker is using a proxy or a VPN, right, or a Tor, right, as an administrator, will you be able to trace where exactly the requests are coming from? As admin, can you trace where exactly the requests are coming from? No, we will not be able to trace where exactly those requests are coming from, because if say hacker is using the premium subscription versions of proxies or maybe the VPN servers and all, right? So there's no way for administrator, or maybe there is no way for the authorities to identify the original source, right? And if it is Tor, obviously Tor doesn't have a free or a paid version, but by default, the nature of the Tor, right, it is forwarding your request to 3 different hops before it is connecting to the internet, right? So obviously there is no way for someone to track it, right? So that's a problem. So now, as an administrator, so if you are an administrator for an organization and you are responsible for protecting their network, what exactly you have to do? How do you try to protect the network resources? So what was the first technique that we have discussed? So we said hacker tries to identify all the details about the target network. So that is footprinting, right? So assume you are a hacker, right? Assume you are a hacker, and sorry, you're not the hacker. You are an administrator, right? So you are the administrator and some hacker is trying to perform footprinting on your network. So a hacker is trying to perform footprinting on your network. Will you be able to stop hacker from performing this footprinting activity? So we'll not be able to stop hacker from performing footprinting, right? So is there a countermeasure for this activity? So you'll not have a countermeasure for this footprinting part, right? So administrator will not be able to prevent a hacker from performing footprinting against their network, right? Then the next step after footprinting is scanning, right? So in scanning again we have different types, right? Hacker tries to identify live IP addresses. Then hacker tries to identify open ports. Hacker tries to identify vulnerabilities. Right? And if vulnerabilities are available, hacker is trying to launch some attack. Right. So here, as an administrator, will you be able to prevent a hacker from identifying live IP addresses on your network? Yes, you can stop a hacker from identifying live IPs on your network. All you need to do is deny ICMP traffic. So by blocking all the ICMP traffic, you'll be able to stop a hacker from identifying what all live IP addresses are present on your network. Then how about open port? So to prevent hacker from identifying open ports, what we can do is first thing, disable unused services. Disable the unused services. So what all services you are not using, disable them so that the number of open ports that are visible will be reduced. The number of open ports that will be visible to a hacker would be reduced. Of course, we will not be able to close all the ports, but at least we can take some precautions to reduce the number of open ports that are visible to a hacker, right? And then you can also use a firewall to prevent port scanning activities, right? You can use a firewall to prevent port scanning activities, right? And what about vulnerabilities? So here to prevent a hacker from identifying some vulnerabilities and launching attacks onto the network, before you bring your server or before you bring your system online, right? Try to perform operating system and application hardening. So operating system and application hardening means downloading and installing the available updates to your operating systems or the applications. Now this has to be done before you bring your server into a live environment. So before you bring the server into a live environment, download and install the updates for the operating system and the application. Once you bring your server into a live environment, perform a vulnerability assessment. Perform a vulnerability assessment. Try to see what all vulnerabilities are available on your system. Try to check for what all vulnerabilities are available on the system. Right. And then try to perform patch management. So in patch management, what happens? You try to download the security patches for those vulnerabilities which are found and then install them. Right. Try to download what all security patches are available for the vulnerabilities and install them. Right. So these three activities: operating system and application hardening, vulnerability assessment, and patch management. All the three has to be done. Once you do the patch management, again the cycle would repeat. You perform vulnerability assessment, try to see if any other vulnerabilities are available on the system, right? If there are some vulnerabilities, right? And then again try to download and install the security patches for it, fixing those vulnerabilities. So that's a cyclic process, right? So that's going to be a cyclic process, right? And if hacker is trying to identify some vulnerabilities, having a firewall and intrusion prevention system will also be helpful, right? Having a firewall and intrusion prevention system will also be helpful, right? So here when you speak about a firewall, right? So in our next module, we'll be discussing about firewalls in detail, but for you to have an understanding what is a firewall, firewall can be a hardware or a software which helps you to control the traffic flow, right? So a firewall will help you to control the traffic flow, incoming and outgoing traffic, right? By using some policies. So as an administrator, you can write some policies using which you will be able to control what kind of traffic is coming into the network and what kind of traffic is going out of the network, right? And intrusion prevention system or IPS is the one which is going to check if the incoming request is a genuine request or is it a hacking attack. So if incoming request is a genuine request, it will let it pass through. But let's say the incoming request is a hacking attack, then it will block it. So having this firewall and IPS combination will be helpful, right? But let us say you don't have this firewall and IPS, right? You will not be able to prevent a hacker from performing this footprinting, the vulnerability scanning options. And let's say hacker is trying to launch an attack. Hacker already knows what is the vulnerability and is trying to launch an attack. So in such condition, except IPS, there is no other technology which can prevent the attack, right? Only IPS will be able to identify the incoming request, see if it is a genuine request or not. And if it is not a genuine request, if it is an attack, it will be blocked, right? If it is a genuine request, it will let it pass through, but if it is an attack, it will be blocked. So only IPS will be helpful in that condition. But let us say hacker is not just going with identifying the vulnerabilities and launching an attack. Let's say hacker is trying to steal your passwords, right? Hacker is trying to steal the password. So hacker is trying to perform, let's say, sniffing. So if hacker is trying to perform sniffing, what should we do to protect our passwords? So here, if hacker is trying to sniff the traffic and capture the passwords, right? We have discussed that hackers are trying to use ARP poison to sniff the traffic, right? So if we can prevent ARP poison, will we be able to protect our passwords from sniffing? Yes, if we can prevent ARP poisoning, we'll be able to protect our passwords from sniffers, right? So to prevent ARP poison, what you can do is try to use static ARP entries, right? Static ARP entries, but this will only be useful or successful if your network is small, right? So if you have a small network of say 5 to 10 computers, right? Then you'll be able to go with static ARP entries. But say you have a large network, right? Some hundreds of systems, then static ARP entries will not really work, right? You'll not be able to configure static ARP entries on each and every system, right? So that will not be useful in the large network. For a small network where you have some 5 to 10 computers, static ARP entries can be used. So in such condition, try to use applications which support end-to-end encryption. Right. Try to use applications which support end-to-end encryptions. Right. And what if hackers are trying to use brute force attack or dictionary attack? What if hackers are trying to use brute force or dictionary attacks? So try to use a strong password, right? Try to use strong passwords. So generally, when you say strong password, ensure that your password is at least 8 to 10 characters in length, and it should have alphabets, numbers, special characters, and all, right? And don't use a simple password which can be easily guessed, right? Don't use a simple password which can easily be guessed. Always try to use a strong password. And do not use the same password for multiple logins, right? So don't use the same password for multiple logins. Try to use different passwords for different logins, and also try to keep changing the passwords, right? So don't use the same password for a very long time. Try to keep changing the passwords on regular basis. So how frequently you're going to change the password? You take a call, right? uh, Start with maybe once in every 3 months, right? Then slowly you can reduce the time to maybe once in every month and all, right? So don't use the same password for multiple logins, and don't use the same password for a very long time, right? And always try to use a strong password, right? You can also use a one-time password, but one-time password uh, is not a solution for your brute force or dictionary, right? Because uh, in the first attempt, right, if a hacker is able to crack your password, right, then you start getting OTP or a message, right, for your one-time passwords or multi-factor authentication. But why should you even use a simple password which is easy to crack? And again, the problem with one-time password, of all the services that you're using on internet on a day-to-day basis, how many of those services are supporting this two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication? And there's a very strange report from Google themselves. Google says only 10% of Google service users are using multi-factor authentication. And multi-factor authentication is not something which is newly given in Google. It's been there for so many years, right? And Google says only 10% of their Google service users are using multi-factor authentication. So the option is available, but when majority people don't know about it, right, it doesn't really provide additional security. So having a strong password is always better. Clear? And then how about phishing attacks and keyloggers? Keyloggers we have already discussed. You have to use Linux Live USB if you are on a third-party computer, and if you are working with your own system, try to use Belarc Advisor. Try to check what all softwares are installed on your machine and accordingly take a decision what has to be there on your system and what has to be removed. So when you speak about the phishing attack, right, there's one simple trick to protect yourself from phishing. Always read the full URL. Check the full URL in your address bar, right? So whether it is HTTP or HTTPS, it doesn't matter, right? Because today you can have phishing URLs with HTTPS connections also, right? So the simple thing, read the full URL, try to see and identify, is the correct website that you are supposed to be connecting to, right? If it is a correct website that you are supposed to be connecting to, you can proceed by typing your password, right? If it is not the correct website that you are supposed to connect with, right, just close the browser and be careful. And how about malwares? How can you protect yourself from different kind of malware attacks? So here when it comes to malware, right, for the newer generation systems, if you are using Windows 10, the newer updated versions after 2019 or Windows 11, you don't need any third party tool, right, to protect yourself. The inbuilt security of your Windows operating system is okay, right? But if you are using Windows 10 version, which is released before 2019, right? Because in some enterprise networks, you have that, right? You'll still be going with the old versions, right? Or if you are still using Windows 7 or Windows 8 for whatever reason, right? In that case, try to use Internet Security Suite. Try to use Internet Security Suite for your protection. But if you are going with the newer versions, you don't have to worry about your security. Your operating system can take care of itself, provided you don't download and install applications and all from unknown sources, right? So always be careful with what softwares you are downloading and where are you downloading it from. Is it from the official source or is it from the official website of the software developer or the manufacturer and all, or are you downloading it from some unknown sources? If it is from unknown sources, right, there's always risk, right? Whether you go with internet security suite or you are depending on the inbuilt security of your operating system. If you are going with third party applications and installations, you'll always have risk, right? Now, what about other operating systems? Linux, Mac, Android, iOS. Do they also need an antivirus or an internet security suite kind of thing? Or is this only required for Windows? So here when you speak about internet security suite or antivirus applications, you also need them for your Linux and Mac, right? Because you have malwares for those platforms also, right? For Linux and Macintosh also, you need this security applications. You don't really need them for your mobile devices, right? Your iPhone and your Android, you don't need those security applications, right? Because of the way how these operating systems are made, right? But for your PC operating systems, be it Windows, Linux, or Mac, you need security application. Then how about your wireless network or your Wi-Fi networks? How do we protect our Wi-Fi networks? Same as what we were discussing about protecting our passwords. Try to use complex password, right? Try to use complex passwords and enable MAC address filter, right? Enable MAC address filter so that except for those MAC addresses which are authorized by the administrator, right? All the other devices will be rejected. So except for the MAC addresses which are authorized by the admin, all the other devices will automatically be rejected, right? And if you are having a Wi-Fi router which supports the WPA3 version and you also have client systems which are supporting WPA3, you can try to enable WPA3, right? So hackers will not be able to crack the WPA3 encryptions, right? Because WPA and WPA2 can be cracked, right? So try to go with WPA3. Okay, is it clear how you can protect yourself from the Wi-Fi attack? Then how about your IoT devices? For IoT devices, not much of a thing there, right? Being careful with what applications you are downloading and installing, right? So that's the main thing. So you'll have to be careful about what applications you are downloading and installing. So that's going to help you in securing your IoT devices, right? Because majority of your IoT devices are connecting to internet through Wi-Fi. As long as your Wi-Fi network is safe, right, and some unknown users or unauthorized users don't get connected to the Wi-Fi network, right, your IoT devices also are safe. And try to take IoT devices only from well-known and reputed brands, right? Uh, because the major challenge with an IoT device is how good is the data communication or how secure is the data communication. So you'll have a mobile app, you have your smart device in your home, right? So how good is the communication between your mobile app and the smart device, right? So always try to take the devices from reputed brands. So at least hopefully those uh, communications are proper, right? And because that's a major security issue with the IoT devices now. And unfortunately, there's nothing much in the control of end user. Like on a PC, if there is something wrong, you can download and install a security patch. There's no such thing for IoT, right? So you are dependent on the vendor, right? So you purchased XYZ smart device based on whatever update the company has given you, right? You have to continue with using whatever is given by the organization or whatever is given by the company. There is no way that you can improve the security of it. Okay, so is this clear? What kind of countermeasures you can take? Vijay, when you say iPhone is secure than Android, uh, being someone who does digital forensics, I don't say iPhone is secure than Android. It's just marketing campaign. Right? And if you ask me very specifically, I can say uh, those MI phones or your Xiaomi, Redmi, Oppo, sorry, not Oppo, the Poco and all, those phones are more secure than your iPhones. But generally, we don't see them in that direction. We always say, okay, MI and all these cheap Chinese phones, but they have more security. What do we say? Like more security parameters and all, more security features than what your iPhone has. Have you guys come across something called DEFCON? So there's a conference called DEFCON where hackers across the globe they all meet up, right? For the past 8 years, the first device that's being compromised in DEFCON conferences are your iPhones, followed by macOS, followed by Windows, and then comes Android. Right. So it's all about how Apple is marketing their device. So it's not about how strong or how secure it is. And don't really go with what enterprise says. Enterprise are using McAfee antivirus. Do you guys use it? So whenever you purchase a laptop or something, right? By default, you get McAfee pre-installed. Have you observed? And do you think McAfee is a good product compared to your Kaspersky, Bitdefender, Quick Heal, and all this? It doesn't even like come to like 50% of efficiency of what you get in Bitdefender and Kaspersky. And enterprise networks go with McAfee. They have been using McAfee. They'll continue to use McAfee. Right. So that's again a completely different kind of discussion. Right. So whatever an enterprise is using doesn't mean that's the best. Practically speaking, you can take an example of your Windows operating systems. So what's the latest version of Windows Server operating system? So Microsoft has Windows Server 2022. But when you speak about enterprise networks, they are still using 2016. There are different there are different things there again, right? Okay. And before we proceed with the next topic, that is the second module, I just wanted to check if is there someone who has only taken the ethical hacking part? So guys, is there someone who has only taken the ethical hacking part? Okay, so if there's no one who has only taken the ethical hacking part, then from tomorrow, right, we'll start with our second module, right? And I think you will also be getting a new password for the session, right? Okay, so with this discussion today, we are done with the first module. We'll start the second module from next session tomorrow. Chandu, when you speak about the legal terms and conditions and all, that's it varies from region to region and all, right? So you'll have to very specifically check what sort of the legal bindings are there according to the location where you are working or where you are offering the services. Okay, so with this, we'll end the session for today. So we'll continue tomorrow. We'll start with our second module. Thank you all.